What if I told you that there is one simple way that you could make millions of dollars by doing next to nothing, and that this money would be 100% tax-free? Well, folks, Michael here, and if you've never heard of the Roth IRA, I don't know, but think about it like an amazing pot or bucket where you can plant some flowers and everything that grows is entirely yours. No Uncle Sam. So look, in this video, my goal is to provide you value by showing you how you may become a multimillionaire the simplest way. It's tax-free, it's legal, it's the simple path to wealth. And, look, later in life, you can be a baller, you can enjoy the Lambos, the exotic vacations, the life of your dreams. It's not taught in schools, and yet it's the first account that you may want to open, and the earlier you do so, the better. In fact, we're going to see that waiting one extra year could cost you over $100,000 in the future. But there are some rules and some limits, and you just got to follow. So let me explain. But first, whether you're new or whether you're returning, I'm so glad to have you here, as you could be anywhere else right now, yet you chose to be here with me. And if you're not already a subscriber, please click on that bell notification button. It's absolutely free, just like this video. Helps the algorithm, so you get more videos like this, and you would definitely be doing me a solid with your support, which I'm so grateful for. So first, what is an IRA? It's just an individual retirement account. It's a bucket, it's a pot to put your investments into. Now the Roth, that's where you've already paid taxes on money that you deposit into that bucket, into that brokerage account. So it's the money that you've left over after you've already paid your taxes that then you put into this bucket or this brokerage account. And then it grows tax-free. All the profits are tax-free. So let's see a little bit more. So the best time to start is right about now. So when you're young, right, no matter what age you are, by the way, because you're younger right now than you will be in the future, no matter what age you are right now. But the younger you are, of course, it's going to have more time, because you need time for compounding. Because look, more money makes you more money, and that more money makes you even more money, and that more money makes you even more money. It's a snowball effect. It takes time, but just sitting on the sidelines even for 1 year, we're going to see cost you thousands of dollars. It's also likely that you are going to be paying less tax when you're young, so now is probably time to invest, because in the future you may have less money to invest after you're paying taxes, because if you're getting promoted and you're doing right things in your job, etc., you'll probably be in a higher tax bracket in the future. So again, the compound math formula is going to come in to show you this right now. So let's have a look. So if we take this initial contribution of $0, we're just starting off with nothing, and we're going to max out, we're going to put in $7,000 this year, our first year, which is the limit right now. We're going to contribute this every year, and we're going to put an assumption here of 7.1% or 7.09%, about 7%, okay? We're going to see where this number comes from very shortly. And we're going to compound this every year. We're going to grow it from, let's say, age 20 until age 65, usual retirement age. So about 45 years. So you've put in around about 315,000, okay? But your compound returns have grown all the way up here to about $1.75 million. So this is all the money that basically your money has made. You've put away this dark blue, but the lighter color, that's basically what your money is making. So that's a huge investment. Now you're a multi-millionaire. You've got more than 2 million. Now let's have a look at this number as to why the 7.09%, okay? So looking at this number from the stock market data, and again, we could nerd out, about whether it's an arithmetic average for the stock market or a geometric average. We're not going to go into too much detail here, but we're going to be very conservative, just in case, you say, hey, Michael, you're using an arithmetic average. No, we're using a geometric average, a compound annual growth rate for about 7.09%, and we're looking at about 150 years of data here. So we're saying that, yeah, if you account for inflation, okay, historical inflation, so these are real numbers right here. So this, we saw that 2 million, etc. That would be, in roughly speaking, in real terms, if we were using this assumption here, okay? So it actually makes the same. It's not just like, well, in the future, 2 million won't be the same. We're accounting for that here. We're accounting for inflation. We're also accounting for reinvesting our dividends, because you earn dividends on lots of stocks and index funds. This is the ideal way to invest. So around about just over 7%. And this is 150 years. Now for the first 100 years, it doesn't change a huge amount. Like, it will fluctuate, sure, year on year, it's going to be quite different. If we look here now, even every 10 years, right, that rate, but it fluctuates sometimes a little bit less than 7%, sometimes a little bit more than 7. And as we go through the years, we kind of see that really doesn't have a huge impact on our results when we look at, let's say, the first 100 years. Okay, it's more the last 50 years where things get a little bit more wild. So the last 40 especially, right? So now it's a little bit higher if we were investing from 1980. And then if we look at around 2000, just before the dot-com internet bubble bust, it was only 5% return over those last 25 years. But then after the Great Recession, it's been a whopping over 11% returns. And then again, this is probably too short to look at, but the last few years since COVID, it's been pretty high. So going back over the whole period, at least for the first 100 years, if we just use that original data plus the last 50, right, it's around at 7%. You're probably going to invest 30 to 50 years plus. So I think taking that long 150-year period, it's a good conservative number, 7%. And look, every year can be down, it can be negative, it can be going up. It's a roller coaster. The main thing for you is not to jump off the roller coaster, okay? So just hang in tight. Some years it's negative, some years it's positive, but that compound average return, not the arithmetic average, and that's a bit more optimistic and it doesn't take into consideration negative downturns, etc. Whereas the compound annual growth rate, this is much more conservative, which is why I'm using it here just in case people are complaining about that. So the 7% is a much safer return. And by the way, if we wait for just 1 year, let's say you're saying to me, well, Michael, I don't have a job yet. You don't need a job to get a Roth IRA, by the way. But let's say you're saying to yourself, okay, I don't have this. I've only I'm only going to have a job next year. I'll wait 1 year. Okay, well, you would have had 2,055,000, but now by just investing for 44 years, so waiting an extra year, that's cost you almost $140,000. That 2,050,000 has become 1,912,000. Okay, so that's just by waiting 1 year. So look at that. That's a huge difference. So that really has that, even though you're only putting 7,000 away, you're like, well, I'll put 7,000 away next year when I have an income. That's just showing the compound effect that the earlier you get in, the better. And what this breaks down, by the way, into, if you think about the numbers, that 7,000 per year is about $575 a month. Maybe that's your car payment. Okay, but what does that break down per day? It's about a meal a day, not a very fancy meal, about $19 a day. Now that's if you're maxing this out. And to give you a little bit of motivation, Peter Thiel, one of the founders and former CEOs of PayPal, he put about $2,000 here into the Roth IRA, his Roth IRA, around about 1999. Now he invested in some startup stocks that were quite cheap, he reinvested. Well, that Roth IRA in Peter Thiel's name has allegedly now grown over $5 billion. The gains, he never has to pay tax as long as he follows the rules. So that's huge, right? That's the extreme end, but we've shown you guys just what the kind of average end could actually be if you're wise about this. So how did this ever come to happen? Well, if you go back to the modern times, the 1990s under President Bill Clinton and Senator Roth, for instance, there wasn't too much willpower to try to benefit the rich with tax breaks. So what they wanted to do was focus on the middle class. So they would have income caps so that you couldn't necessarily contribute to this when your income gets too high. There were also lower limits in terms of what you could put in. So you couldn't put in millions of dollars in here. You could only put a small amount of money in here. And it's tax-free, that's the income on it, is tax-free, provided that we follow some limits and some rules. And another thing that's completely tax-free, by the way, is smashing that like button. It helps the YouTube algorithm and encourages me to make more free content. So thank you so much, you guys. Now, unless you're 18 plus, you're gonna have to look into a custodial account. So either a parent or a guardian is gonna sign it for you, and you put earned income in there. So it could be that you're maybe cutting grass, doing lawn care, maybe you're cleaning windows, summer job, something like that. But it only takes 10 to 20 minutes to set the account up online. But once you have this account, this brokerage account, it's just a pot. Okay, it's just a bucket. You have to put something in that bucket. You have to invest. Don't forget to invest. Don't just open up the account. It's just a brokerage account. So you got to place something in. Maybe due to childhood trauma, you like individual stocks, fine. Or maybe like me personally, I put in index funds, like a broad stock market index, something like the VTI. The Vanguard VTI is like the ETF equivalent. There's also VTSAX, which is Vanguard's mutual fund equivalent. Right now, it could change, but right now the VTI is a slightly lower expense ratio, although you do get the automation benefits of the VTSAX after that first $3,000, because you got to have at least $3,000 your first time the VTSAX. After that, you can contribute $100 a month. But VTI, I mean, you can buy fractional shares depending on your brokerage. Now that 7% return we talked about, that's dividends readjusted. Make sure, if they're not already on, to turn on your dividend readjustment when you're looking online, when you're actually buying it for the first time. You can go online, ask your brokerage account, how do I turn on dividends, readjust my, or reinvest my dividends? Okay, that's important to do. But this 7% is if you're actually reinvest. Otherwise, the dividends get paid out, they just hang around your account in cash. You want to put that little bit extra back in, the little flowers, the petals that fall off, because it's almost like an acorn falling off a tree. That's going to become another tree and another one and another one. Have that reinvested automatically so that you don't have to. It's not just going to sit there in cash earning 0% in your account. By the way, that 7% is also accounting for inflation, right? So it's a long-term average. And as I showed you, you can be down some years, you can go up some years. It's a roller coaster. Just don't get off that roller coaster. Don't jump off the roller coaster. Hang on for dear life. Okay, that's the most important thing. But Michael, where would you open up a brokerage account, you might ask me? So this is just my own personal experience, my own personal opinion too. Fidelity has a great brokerage account. And they also have a very good credit card system, about 2% cash back once you have a relationship with Fidelity Bank. Now, Fidelity as well has a really, really helpful and clear to use website and excellent customer service, similar to Charles Schwab. In fact, I have mine right now with Charles Schwab. Charles Schwab have a very good checking or deposit account where currently they pay you interest of about 0.05% interest on your checking account, which is great. Vanguard is also pretty good. I mean, most of these I've mentioned so far, they're all pretty much free when you buy the VTI or buy VTSAX. The $0 commission, but do just check because these things can change over time. But right now, at the time of recording, it's totally free. I also personally use Merrill Edge, which is like the sister company of Merrill Lynch. It's the brokerage arm of Bank of America. And there are others, plenty of others. Okay, so that was kind of fun, but there are some limits. You've got to follow them, unfortunately, right? So you can only contribute up to a maximum of $7,000 in a year. Now, if you're over 50, then you can do what's called a catch-up, an extra $1,000, so your maximum contribution can be up to $8,000. Now, if you're filing jointly, right, as a couple, then per spouse, that would mean about $14,000 when you're under 50. When you're over 50, it's about 16. If you're both over 50, it's about 16,000. But there's also another limit, which is your income limit. Now, we're looking at your MAGI, or your modified adjusted gross income. So it's a bit like your gross income, right? Everything you're earning. But then with the modified part, again, you could go into a tax calculator to figure this out, but just generally speaking, the modified part is you're just subtracting certain things like you're earning abroad that's excluded, or non-taxable Social Security benefits. The adjusted part, again, you're just deducting again, is things that are non-itemized or non-standard deductions. So things like the contributions that you're making potentially to a health savings account, if you've got some military moving costs, or educator expenses. Typically, though, the MAGI and the gross income aren't that far apart. Okay, so your Maggie cannot exceed 150,000. After that, you start to get phased out in terms of how much you can contribute to the Roth. After 165,000, that's it. You can't contribute to the Roth. It's quite a thin band between 150 and 165 where you start to go down, and then that's it, you're banned. Now, for a couple, those numbers are 236,000 right now. Up to that point, you can contribute. That's not a problem. But once your Maggie goes over 236, you start to actually get phased out. And at 10 more on top of that, so 246, above that, you can't contribute to the Roth at all. Or can you? So there is what's known as a backdoor, or colloquially what's known as a rich person's Roth. Now, if you're earning that kind of money, you can probably talk to your investment or brokerage account and maybe even talk to your tax advisor, CPA, etc. to do that, because it's a lot of details that make this video even longer than it already is. But for the backdoors Roth, you can think about, typically, there's different ways of doing it, but typically what you do is you open a traditional IRA, individual retirement account. You fund that account to the limit with after-tax dollars. So let's say you put in up to $7,000 into this. And then you could do what's known as a rollover, your traditional, into a Roth. And you can do this usually through your brokerage account, get on the phone with them, and they'll basically walk you through the process. They probably will suggest that you talk to your tax advisor too. Now, 5-year rule, we're going to see that next, is going to start applying, and it's a little more complicated in the backdoor Roth than it is generally speaking, but we're going to get to that next. Okay, looking at some more rules. So there are 2 big rules. The first rule is called a 5-year rule, and the second one is the age rule of 59.5. Now, if you take out the principal that you put in, so let's say you put in $1,000, it grows to $2,000, you can take out that principal, that $1,000 tax-free. So that's why the Roth IRA is really, really good. If you really need some money, right, in desperation, an emergency, you can do it. But you cannot put that money back in, so I would be very reluctant to take it out earlier. Now, in terms of those rules, the age rules, right, the 59.5, after 59.5, typically what that means is you won't be paying earnings, like taxing on earnings, right? You'll avoid that. So to make it a bit more clear with the rules, we're going to have a look at this little table here. So golden is if you're at least 59.5 and you've had 5 years since you first contributed to the Roth. Now, you can change the account. It can go from one brokerage to another. It's just, when was it? What year did you first start contributing to the account? Now, I first started in 2016, but I changed my investment brokerage for my Roth. I used to be with Merrill Edge. That got switched over at some point to TD Ameritrade. Then it got switched over to Charles Schwab, but it's still at 2016. So I've gone past 2016, so I've satisfied the 5-year rule from the first time you actually make the first contribution. Now, there's no tax on the earnings, there's no penalties if you're older and if you've got that 5-year rule met. Now, if you're a little bit younger and you've not had it in that long, well, then you get the double whammy. You get a 10% penalty. That's 10% on the withdrawing. Whatever you withdraw, you pay 10% penalty plus the tax on the earnings. Now, if you're a bit older, but you've only, let's say you're 60 and you only put it in at 58, you haven't been there long enough, well, you know, you're older, so you won't pay penalties, because that's the whole point here. It's like, it's supposed to be there for people who are retiring, they're a bit older. You won't pay a penalty, but you will pay tax on the earnings. You have to keep it in a bit longer, right? So that's for the regular people. Now, if you're a spouse, the inherited part at the bottom, if you're a spouse and it wasn't you, right, it was somebody else, your spouse contributed. If your spouse was only contributing it to it recently, that spouse did not start contributing to it 5 years or longer ago, then unfortunately you still will pay the tax on the earnings. You won't pay a penalty though. On the other side, for those that have got a higher income, they're doing the Roth conversion, etc., you just have to look at that 5-year rule. You won't pay tax on the earnings necessarily, but you will have that 10% penalty. So it's important to have a look at this. So really with that 5-year rule, it's the first account that you should be opening. You want to get to that 5 years as fast as possible. But one other great thing about it, one final great thing, is that there's no RMD or required minimum distribution. Unlike a 401k or a 403b if you're at the university or a tax-exempt institution, nonprofit, etc. So there's no need to sell or to liquidate when you go over a certain age. Let's say it's 73. It'll probably increase over time as the life expectancy goes up. But there's no one forcing you to take money out. Now, if it is the case that you have a 401k, let's say you're 73, now you're required. So they look at the life expectancy table right now at the IRS, and let's say you had $100,000 in your balance of your 401k. What that means is you take your balance, 100,000, you divide it by the life expectancy according to the IRS, and that means that you have to withdraw about $6,097.56 in that year. So they're kind of forcing you to liquidate your positions, to sell your positions, which not the nicest thing to do, but of course it's because you didn't pay tax in the 401k, they need to get that tax from you. Now you did pay tax before you put it into a Roth, so you're not going to be paying tax, so they're not going to really force you to take it out at any point. There's no RMDs for the Roth. And by the way, that also applies if you have a Roth 401k or a Roth version of a 403b, which I have. So I have to pay tax while I'm working, but once that matures or once I get to retirement, I won't be paying tax withdrawing from the Roth 401k or the Roth 403b. So that's something that's nice if you don't want to liquidate. Again, you can make your own decisions on that. There's other things to take into consideration as well. So there you have it, folks. Consider the Roth IRA as your first investment account. And look, you don't have to be the inventor of the next big tech startup like PayPal to take advantage of completely tax-free growth. You could do this as soon as you finish this video. And of course, as soon as you finished smashing that like button. And this is something that you could pretty much do in the next 10 to 20 minutes. And I personally have zero financial interest in you opening up these accounts at all. No commissions, etc. It's just something that I wish I did in my first year living and working in the US. I had no idea that it existed. Nobody told me. It was never taught in the PhD, in the master's programs, nothing. So this is the video I wish I could have seen when I was younger. So as always, guys, smash that notification button so YouTube notifies you anytime I post a video. As we say in Ireland, may the road rise up to meet you, may the wind be always at your back, may the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rains fall soft upon your fields until we meet again.